Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to go over how to never be unseated as an incumbent. Okay. If you've held a contract for a base year, 4 option years, or 5 years, there's really no reason you should be losing your recompete. All right. So the key tip, I'll just get out of the way right up front. All right. Assuming you have been doing exactly what you're supposed to do, your performance is excellent. You've established relationships with the COR, all the key stakeholders, anyone your contractors interact with, not just the COR. All right, they know who you are, they know what you do. Everything's running smoothly. All right, when it's maybe a year out from recompete, okay, you both have a copy of that statement of work or performance work statement. All right, so you know how it could be written better, all right, so that it better meets the customer's end state. Okay. If you've done it for 5 years, you know where the gaps are, you know where there's inefficiencies. So modifying that statement of work to provide the customer as a suggestion, right, for their market research or just feedback from you as a contractor, all right, modify that statement of work. And I mean, maybe say something like, after working with you for 5 years, here are some suggested efficiencies you may consider incorporating to the requirement that we believe would help a contractor meet your end state, regardless of who that is. Okay, so not to mention here, I added some tasks to some of the FTEs to cover the work we've been doing that's above and beyond. Maybe it's out of scope, but you're doing it anyway. All right, and then you downgraded levels of support for other FTEs to reflect the actual work being performed. All right, so that's in the best interest of the government. You're making the requirement more efficient, right? Based off all the experience you have, the 5 years of experience you have supporting this government customer, all right? But also in that statement of work where it says contractor specific requirements, um, contractor specific past performance certifications, what have you, that's where you would want to scope it toward you. Okay. So contractors shall submit past performance for contracts within the last 5 years that are similar in size, scope, and complexity. Contractors shall have a minimum of 3 examples of past performance supporting SOF or special mission units within the last 5 years. Anything that's specific to you. Do you have an FFL, firearms license, or a federal, an explosives license? Contractor, shall submit a copy of their FFL and FEL, with their proposal. In addition to all of this unique past performance that's very, very scoped toward you. So when you give them the updated statement of work, they're just suggestions for their market research. Again, after 5 years of performing on that contract, you know what needs to be improved. You know the levels of support that probably need to be downgraded, and then you know the tasks that need to be added to each FTE to reflect the actual work being done. That might not have been written in there before. So they could take that and throw it in the trash. They're just suggestions. That's all you can do. But if you don't know, one of the only things a customer has in their control in the contracting process is their requirement. That's it. Right? Nobody can tell them what their requirement is. Once it goes to the contracting office, it's out of their hands. Okay. And it follows a procedure and there's really no way they could tip it in your direction. The only thing they have control over is their requirement. So that's what you want to get in influence. And obviously these suggestions, you want it to benefit them. They need to make sense. And if they want to keep you, they're going to keep the suggestions that you made for the minimum contractor requirements. Okay. So it's scoped toward you. If everything's going well, nobody wants that changeover of onboarding a new contractor, and then you have a risk of losing key people who you've been working with as a customer you've been working with for the last 5 years who knows the mission. Everything runs like a well-oiled machine. You don't want to lose those people. Okay. So a lot of times if the government wants to keep you as the incumbent, but they don't know how. So you need to give them the ammo they need to put into their requirement. All right. So that when it comes out to bid, there's no guarantees ever, but you can really tip everything in your favor tremendously. All right. By adding to the contractor specific requirements or minimum past performance. Okay. You're raising that bar really high or you're scoping it um, so specifically toward you that anybody can bid on it. It's just no one's going to be technically acceptable, right? And that's the right way of doing it. And that's totally within the customer's control, whether they know it or not. I would say more often than not, they don't know. They could want to keep you all day long, but they don't know how. So you need to kind of show them how, right? And that's what I've seen work. It's very effective. And really, why incumbents lose, it's only going to be for a few reasons, right? It's poor performance, which if you're talking to the COR, you have great communication, you're identifying all the stakeholders in that unit that you're supporting, not just the COR. That's just the gentleman who, he submits the reports every month and got his DAU certs off DAU. But, the commander is a stakeholder. Maybe you have personnel in a warehouse that are issuing equipment, turn-ins, cataloging it. I mean, shipping, receiving, maybe in a motor pool. There's usually an NCO or a chief down there who kind of oversees those contractors, even though they're not the COR. All right. Those are all key stakeholders, and you need to have a relationship with all those people, and you need to constantly be getting feedback. All right. They need to know what you do, and they also the problems that you solve. If you're proactive and you see problems coming, a mile away and you're proactive and you prevent them, well, they need to know that. All right. Because otherwise they just think, hey, everything, just magically works and there's no problems at all because they don't know that you're behind the scenes making all this stuff happen. A lot of times they don't. No news is good news. All right. So you kind of need to bring that up and say, hey, here's some problems that we saw and that we knocked out, ahead of time. And, I suggest doing this so it doesn't happen again. All right. Every stakeholder needs to be getting feedback like that. And then you also need to uh, kind of pull them aside and say, hey, man, it's in a perfect world. I'm not saying we're doing anything bad, but if you could have your way by just snapping your fingers, like what would you improve? How can we better support you? Where are there gaps? Do you need more communication? Is there something that maybe we could be taking care of that we're not taking care of? You just need to always get feedback, I'd say at least a couple times a year from each stakeholder. And if they don't have any feedback, they're like, no, man, everything's great. Everything's running like a well-oiled machine. There's no issues. I really have nothing for you. We love working with you guys. That's what you want to hear. So really, if an incumbent loses, where a customer wants to get rid of you, it's because you're not doing that. There's almost no way you're doing that. Maybe a bad relationship with the leadership. So that's again identifying key stakeholders. It might not be the COR, it might be the commander. All right, that's who has the sway. Because even though he has the sway, that doesn't mean he's going to do the whole service contract packet, get on DAU, do his COR certificates. That's going to be tasked out to somebody else. So commander, he needs to know who you are, knocking on his door and saying, "Hey, sir, can I have 5 minutes of your time? I support you, here, here, and here. Motor pool, you know, riff issue facility, equipment issue facility, wherever it is you're at. They need to know who you are and what you're doing so that they don't just think that everything magically happens. They know it's you. You want to get to a point where the customer can't imagine life without you. So like 5 years ago, before the service contract was ever put in place, they would think like, how did we ever get anything done without these people? Or they couldn't even imagine how operations went without this contracted support. You're making yourself indispensable. So if they lost you, it's kind of like, losing a leg or an appendage or something like that. They just can't imagine it, so they're invested in keeping you. Okay. But you still need to show them how to keep you, and that's a really good way to do it is give them suggestions or improvements to strengthen the requirement. all right, that based off the last 5 years, 4.5 years of work that you've been doing for them. But that's also where you're going to scope it toward you in the contractor specific requirements. But besides having a bad relationship, poor performance, you're not getting feedback. Maybe you're reactive and you're not proactive. You're not identifying problems and preventing them before they ever come up. Uh, you could just be tone deaf and think everything's fine. And in reality, uh, again, you're not getting feedback from every key stakeholder, not just the COR, right? You're being tone deaf. You're not very situationally aware. So be familiar with your stakeholders, not just the COR. Anybody that your contractors support who's a green suitor or a senior GS, whatever, whoever's working with them day in, day out, you wanna have a relationship with them and always get feedback. And you just want to constantly improve. And again, if they can't imagine life without you, then they're gonna do whatever they can to keep you, and you need to help them. You need to give them the ammo they need to keep you, because as the customer, the only thing they have in their control in the contracting process for the most part is their requirement. So, would a contract officer agree with any of that? I don't know, probably not, but there's how things are supposed to go, and then there's, how things really work. And that's what I'm trying to communicate today. But other than that, one more time, just something you could say after working with you for 5 years. Here are some suggested efficiencies you may consider, incorporating to the requirement that we believe would better help a contractor meet your end state. Regardless of who that is, you're strengthening the SOW and you're filling the holes and the gaps. Hey, I added tasks to some of these tasks and responsibilities of some of these FTEs to cover the work that we've actually been doing, above and beyond. Might be out of scope, might not, but you're still doing it. All right. It's reflecting the actual work being done. Okay. And I downgraded levels of support for other FTEs to reflect the work actually being performed. All right. So you're making it better. But in that SOW, you know, that you just strengthened, you're also going to give them the ammo they need to keep you, which is putting contractor specific requirements and in minimum past performance. You're going to put details in there that's really specific to your company. And if they want to keep you and they don't want things to change, they're going to keep those. They're going to incorporate that into the new requirement. So you're not going to lose the recompete for the most part. And some of those things could be, contractors shall submit past performance for contracts within the last 5 years that are similar in size, scope, and complexity. So even if somebody wants to compete, they need to submit a similar contract that is similar in size, scope, and complexity, right? Which no contracts are the same. They're all very different, but that's a pretty big barrier. And so if you say contractor shall have a minimum of 3 examples of past performance supporting SAW for special mission units within the last 5 years, and you have, three, at least three or more than three, well, that's a really big barrier. Everybody can still compete, but you're scoping everybody out. Okay. So that's kind of the gist of the video. And hopefully, if you enjoyed it, leave a comment. If you have questions, ask me in the comment section. And other than that, you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.